If you spend enough time scrolling through psychology forums, reading relationship blogs, or watching standard self-help videos at 2 in the morning, you will inevitably find a very comforting story. It is the modern fable of the empath and the narcissist. The narrative goes exactly like this. You are a beacon of pure light. You are full of boundless, tragic compassion. And toxic people, the narcissists, the takers, the manipulators, are simply emotional vampires, drawn magnetically to your warmth just to drain you dry. It feels incredibly good to believe this story, doesn't it? It completely absolves you. It allows you to package your repeated trauma into a neat, noble identity. It makes you the tragic, innocent hero of your own chronic suffering. But real behavioral science does not care about fairy tales. And as long as you continue to believe that you are just an unlucky, passive magnet for bad people, you will remain locked inside a psychological prison of your own design. Let's get the hardest truth out of the way right now. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are an unconscious volunteer in a very familiar war. Toxic people do not breach your boundaries. They are invited in through the back door by a shadow system you don't even know you're running. To stop this cycle tonight, we have to strip away the pop psychology buzzwords and look at the actual, biological hardware of your brain. In 1920, grappling with the trauma of World War I, Sigmund Freud observed a terrifying phenomenon in human behavior. He watched survivors repeatedly, almost compulsively, place themselves back into the exact same, dangerous, soul-crushing situations that broke them in the first place. He identified this glitch in the human machine and called it repetition compulsion. Amateur psychology will tell you that you stay in toxic relationships because you have low self-esteem or poor boundaries. No, you stay and you relentlessly return because of a deeply ingrained neurobiological mandate. Repetition compulsion is your brain's flawed, desperate attempt to master an unmastered trauma from your past. You subconsciously seek out the exact same emotional temperature of your earliest pain, hoping that this time you can rewrite the script. You believe that this time you can make the emotionally unavailable person stay. This time you can make the cruel person kind. This time you can finally win the unwinnable game. In modern neuroscience, there is a foundational law of neuroplasticity called Hebbian learning. The rule is simple. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Imagine your developing brain is a dense, overgrown jungle. Every time you experience a strong emotion, someone walks through that jungle with a machete cutting a rough path. If you grew up in a household or an early environment where love was inextricably tied to chaos, unpredictability, conditionality, or walking on eggshells, your brain took that machete and hacked a massive, paved, 8-lane superhighway connecting the concept of love directly to the concept of anxiety. This is why your dating history looks the way it does. When you walk into a room and meet someone who is incredibly stable, safe, consistent, and emotionally available, your brain literally does not recognize it as love. There is no superhighway built for that experience. Your nervous system scans that healthy person and registers them as boring. Or, even more tragically, it registers their peacefulness as a distinct threat. It feels like the deafening calm before a terrifying storm. But what happens when a toxic person walks into that same room? When a highly manipulative, emotionally unavailable, or chaotic person enters your orbit, they hit that paved superhighway going 100 miles an hour. Your specific trauma neurons light up like a grid. Your cortisol spikes. Your adrenaline floods the system. Your dopamine surges in a desperate attempt to predict their unpredictable behavior. And here is the greatest tragedy. You mistake this massive, chaotic chemical dump of pure survival panic for butterflies. You call it an instant spark. It is not a spark. It is your shadow recognizing its mirror. It is your deeply conditioned brain saying, "I know this exact flavor of hell. I know how to survive here. Let's play the game again." You are a highly efficient machine executing a flawless, outdated survival program. But to finally rewrite the code, you have to understand who programmed it into you in the first place. You have to go down into the basement and meet the ghosts living in your machine. You probably walk through your life believing that you are alone in your own mind. You believe that the inner voice making your decisions, the voice telling you who to trust, who to text back, who to avoid, and who to love, is entirely your own. It isn't. You are carrying ghosts, and those ghosts are currently driving the car. In the mid-20th century, pioneering psychoanalysts developing object relations theory made a chilling discovery about the developing human mind. They realized that when you were a helpless infant, you didn't just passively interact with your early caregivers, you downloaded them. Because your survival literally depended on predicting the moods of the giants raising you, your developing brain took these people, their rage, their neglect, their suffocating anxiety, or their icy inconsistency, and built literal psychological avatars of them inside your mind. In clinical psychology, we call these phantoms, introjects. You need to understand that introjects are not memories. Memories are passive files sitting in a cabinet. Introjects are active, aggressive, highly efficient subroutines running constantly in the background of your mental operating system. If you had a caregiver who was emotionally unavailable, you didn't just learn the objective fact that they were distant, you internalized their distance as a fundamental flaw in you. You wove a phantom critic directly into your neural pathways, a relentless voice that constantly scans your adult environment for proof that you are inherently unworthy of being chosen. You built a void. Your brain used these early introjects to build what behavioral scientist John Bowlby called an internal working model. It is a subconscious, deeply ingrained, non-negotiable map of what love is supposed to cost you. And your brain, above all else, is a prediction machine. It craves the familiar pattern, even if the familiar pattern is absolute agony. Which brings us to the most terrifying, unspoken truth of your entire dating life. When you walk into a crowded room and lock eyes with the most toxic, unavailable person there, you aren't meeting a stranger. You are recognizing a very old, incredibly dangerous friend. You are looking at a flesh and blood manifestation of your own internal ghost. This isn't poetry. This isn't a metaphor. This is cold, hard anatomy. Deep inside the temporal lobe of your brain sits the amygdala, your primitive emotional processing and threat detection center. Your amygdala does not process time linearly. It doesn't know you are an adult living your life right now. It has no concept of the calendar year. It only remembers the specific, visceral feeling of your earliest relational traumas. If, in your most formative developmental years, the concept of love was intrinsically tied to a feeling of deep anxiety, a desperate need to perform for affection, or the constant, lingering terror of sudden abandonment, your amygdala coded that specific, agonizing anxiety as the biological prerequisite for love. So, when this highly damaged person across the room triggers that exact, archaic cocktail of panic, uncertainty, and desperate longing, your amygdala doesn't scream, "Run." Your amygdala screams, "Home." But here is the real question, the one that should keep you awake tonight. In a room full of 50 perfectly normal, healthy people, how did the shadow find you? You didn't speak a single word to them. You didn't wear a sign on your chest. Yet somehow, almost magically, the two of you completely bypassed the healthy crowd to find each other in the dark. We like to believe that our trauma is a deeply guarded secret. We think that if we dress well, smile at the right times, and project confidence, our internal voids remain completely invisible to the outside world. This is a fatal misunderstanding of human biology. We're walking emitters. Right now, as you walk down a busy street, sit in a dimly lit coffee shop, or casually scroll through a dating app, you are relentlessly broadcasting a complex, invisible, and highly specific data stream about your internal world. And so is everyone else. You don't need to wear a neon sign on your chest that says, "I need to be saved" or "I am easy to manipulate" for a toxic person to find you. Your brain and your body are already screaming it on a biometric frequency that only they are tuned to hear. This is the brutal neurobiology of thin slicing. In psychology, there is a phenomenon known as thin slicing. Research shows that in less than 1/10 of a second faster than your conscious mind can process a single coherent thought. The human brain makes astonishingly accurate, complex judgments about another person's emotional state, dominance, and vulnerability based on microscopic slivers of visual data. You don't have to say a single word. Your shadow is physically mapped into your biology. When a highly manipulative, dark triad or predatory personality scans a crowded room, they aren't looking for conventional beauty, wealth, or intelligence. They are hunting. They are subconsciously scanning the crowd for specific somatic markers, the physical, muscular echoes of your internalized trauma introjects. They see the microscopic slump in your shoulders that signals an ingrained dynamic of apology. They notice the fraction of a second delay in your smile that betrays a desperate need for external validation. They measure the exact duration of your eye contact. They see the shape of your void before you even know they are looking at you. When these two specific architectures meet, it triggers the darkest, most unbreakable dance in all of clinical psychology: projective identification. This isn't a fluffy concept from a daytime talk show. This is raw, terrifying psychoanalytic reality. Here is exactly how this lock works in real life. A deeply narcissistic or toxic person fundamentally cannot tolerate their own repressed vulnerability, shame, or weakness. To them, those emotions are psychological death. So, their brain forcefully ejects those feelings. They unconsciously project their own brokenness onto you. And you? Because you are carrying your own internalized shadow. That heavy introject telling you that your only value is in fixing others, that you must earn love by carrying burdens. You feel a subconscious, overwhelming compulsion to receive their projection. You volunteer to be the container for their toxicity, falsely believing that if you can just handle their darkness, you will finally gain the control and safety you were denied in childhood. You believe you are having a conversation. You believe you are just flirting. You are entirely wrong. The final, undeniable proof that your shadow has found its mirror isn't a thought. It isn't a text message. It is a violent, physical event. Before your conscious mind has even decided if you like this person, your autonomic nervous systems have reached out and made a blood pact in the dark. This is autonomic syncing. You mistake this instant biochemical lock, this massive, overwhelming surge of survival chemistry, for soulmate-level connection. But this is not chemistry. This is the heavy steel door of your psychological prison slamming shut. You have found the exact frequency of your childhood trauma. The algorithm has been executed. The system is live. The hunt is over. You are hooked. And now, the most sadistic part of the program activates. To keep you trapped in this cycle, your newly synced nervous system must now do something unimaginable. It must make peace, stability, and healthy love feel like absolute, terrifying death to you. You think you are hopelessly, romantically in love. You are not. You are in a state of acute, unmanageable chemical withdrawal. To finally understand why you cannot simply walk away from a toxic person, why logic completely fails you when they text you at 2 a.m, we have to strip away the poetry. We have to look at the brutal, unfeeling mathematics of your neurochemistry. Pop culture and amateur internet therapists have lied to you about dopamine. They have sold you the idea that dopamine is the pleasure chemical. It is not. In behavioral science, dopamine is the seeking chemical. It is the molecule of relentless anticipation. It is the drive to solve the puzzle. There is a fundamental neurological concept known as a reward prediction error. Your brain is a highly advanced prediction engine. If a partner is consistently kind, loving, emotionally available, and entirely predictable, your brain very quickly maps their behavior. The puzzle is solved. The reward is expected. Because there is no mystery, there is no prediction error. Therefore, the dopamine flatlines. But a toxic person? A highly narcissistic or emotionally unavailable person is a walking, breathing human slot machine. They operate on a psychological principle that B.F. Skinner proved decades ago: intermittent reinforcement. This is the single most addictive behavioral loop in existence. One day, they treat you like an absolute god. They mirror your deepest desires and bomb you with affection. The next day, they don't text you back for 24 hours. They manufacture a severe emotional crisis out of thin air. They give you microscopic breadcrumbs of love, wrapped tightly in miles of cold, punishing silence. Because your brain never knows when the next hit of affection is actually coming, your nervous system is forced to stay in a permanent, exhausting state of hyperarousal. The dopamine system goes into absolute overdrive, desperately seeking the pattern, obsessively trying to solve the unsolvable puzzle of their behavior. when they finally do text you back, or when they finally offer a hollow apology after days of silent treatment, the dopamine spike is so incredibly massive, so violently euphoric, that it etches a trauma bond directly into your brainstem. You are not in love. You are literally, biologically addicted to the relief of the pain that they intentionally caused you. Which brings us to the most tragic, self-destructive paradox of the shadow. What actually happens when the healthy person finally shows up? Imagine a soldier returning from a brutal, horrific 10-year war. You take them directly from the trenches and place them in a perfectly quiet, comfortable suburban living room. They do not feel peace. They feel absolute terror. The silence is a threat. Their nervous system is actively screaming, "Where is the sniper? Where is the ambush? Why is it so quiet?" According to polyvagal theory, your autonomic nervous system operates in different biological gears. Healthy, sustainable love requires you to be anchored in the ventral vagal state, a biological state of deep safety, social connection, and profound calm. But if your internal baseline was built in a childhood war zone of emotional neglect, or if you spent years in toxic, high-drama relationships, your baseline is permanently stuck in sympathetic arousal, the state of fight, flight, or freeze. Your body literally pumps chronic cortisol just to maintain a sense of normalcy. When an emotionally available, stable, and genuinely kind person enters your life, they do not trigger your sympathetic arousal. They do not trigger the cortisol spike. They do not spin the slot machine. Because your traumatized brain strictly equates the concept of love with the physical sensation of anxiety, the absolute absence of anxiety feels like the absence of love. You look at this kind, completely stable person, and your shadow whispers, "There is no chemistry here. This is boring. Run." You are chemically repelling the cure and violently, desperately craving the poison. The algorithm is complete. The trap is shut. But knowing you are locked in a biological cage does not open the door. To break a chemical addiction, to sever this somatic bond once and for all, you cannot simply use logic. You cannot think your way out of a nervous system response. You have to go completely off the grid. You have to descend into the underworld of your own body and meet the architect of the void face to face. You cannot think your way out of a biological trap. You can read every behavioral psychology book on the planet. You can memorize every single red flag. You can write lists of affirmations until your hand cramps, and your autonomic nervous system will still instantly override your logic the exact second that familiar shadow walks into the room. To shut down this algorithm, you cannot use your conscious, rational mind. You have to go beneath it. Famed psychoanalyst Carl Jung warned humanity that whatever we do not bring to consciousness will inevitably appear in our lives as fate. He called this hidden architecture the shadow. Pop culture has completely distorted this concept, making the shadow out to be something evil or malevolent. It is not. Your shadow is simply the psychological dumping ground for every single part of yourself that you were forced to amputate in childhood in order to survive. It is your exiled anger. It is your forbidden need. It is your unprotected vulnerability. Because you were forced to banish these parts of yourself, they became the Introjects, the starving, invisible ghosts running your neurochemistry. And right now, they are sitting in the driver's seat of your life. But you cannot fight a ghost you refuse to look at. We are going to locate your specific ghost right now in the actual tissues of your physical body. Do not click away. Do not look at the comments. Stop whatever else you are doing right now. I want you to uncross your legs. Put your feet flat on the floor. Now, I want you to think of the most toxic, chaotic person you have ever loved, the one who broke the system. Bring their face into your mind right now. I want you to remember the exact moment they pulled away from you. Remember the specific tone of their voice when they dismissed you. Remember the exact text message that made your stomach drop into absolute nothingness. Hold that memory. Do not push it away. Now, stop thinking about them and scan your own body. Where is the pain sitting right now? Is it a crushing, suffocating weight sitting dead center on your chest? Is it a cold, hollow, pulling void in the absolute pit of your stomach? Is it a tight, restrictive gripping in your throat? Don't judge it. Just find it. Find the exact physical geographical coordinate of that terror inside your flesh. Focus all of your attention on that one specific physical spot. Breathe directly into it. That specific physical sensation you just felt. That is not heartbreak. That is not anxiety. That is the exact physiological manifestation of your core wound. You just successfully performed a clinical technique called somatic tracking. You just located the exact physical address of your trauma. You just found the introject. In advanced behavioral therapy, we use a profound mechanism called cognitive diffusion. The trap of the toxic relational cycle is that you genuinely believe you are the anxiety. You believe you are afraid of abandonment. Cognitive diffusion forcefully separates the observer from the observed. By physically locating the feeling in your chest or your stomach, you just created psychological space. You just realized something incredibly powerful. You are not the void. You are the awareness observing the void. You have just consciously stepped out of the shadow's hunting ground. When you can look at the physical, agonizing sensation of terror in your own body and say, "I see you. I know exactly why you are here, but you do not drive this car anymore." You instantly strip the toxic person of all their dark magic. They are no longer a god granting you validation. They are just a highly damaged, ordinary person pressing a button that is no longer wired to your machine. You have finally found the architect. You have located the void. But there is a massive problem. That neurological superhighway, that thick, burning, paved path in your brain that forcefully connects the concept of love to the feeling of panic is still physically intact. And to make sure you never ever walk down it again, we have to cleanly cut the wire, and we have to do it tonight. Let me give you the hardest truth in all of modern psychology. Insight without action is nothing but informed suffering. You can sit in a therapist's chair for 10 straight years. You can write down exactly why your father left, or exactly why your mother was cold. You can completely map out your internal void. But knowing the exact square footage of your psychological prison does not unlock the door. When it is 2 o'clock in the morning, and that toxic person texts you, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational, adult part of your brain that knows they are bad for you, completely shuts down. Your amygdala violently hijacks the system. Logic fails. To permanently dismantle this architecture, you cannot rely on willpower. You have to physically, structurally change the soft tissue of your brain. You have to execute the severing. For decades, scientists believed that by the time you reached adulthood, your brain was set in concrete. We now know that is a complete lie. Modern neuroscience has handed us a biological superpower. It is called self-directed neuroplasticity. Your brain is not a static block of concrete. It is a dynamic, living, highly adaptable plastic. The neurological superhighway that connects the concept of love to the physical sensation of panic was built through repetition. Which means it can be aggressively starved, structurally weakened, and ultimately completely destroyed through deliberate, conscious interruption. Here is the exact, non-negotiable cognitive protocol you are going to run for the rest of your life. The next time you walk into a room, lock eyes with a stranger, or go on a first date, and you suddenly feel that massive, earth-shattering spark, when you feel that violent rush of dopamine, that instant magnetic pull, and the overwhelming feeling that you have known this person for 1,000 years, you are not going to ask for their number. You are going to stop. You are going to physically feel your feet pressed against the floor. You are going to take a breath into your stomach, and you are going to say these exact words inside your head: I am not experiencing chemistry. I am experiencing recognition. My nervous system has just identified a highly familiar threat. I am observing my shadow. This is the psychological application of the observer effect. In quantum physics, the mere act of observing a particle fundamentally changes its behavior. In human neurobiology, explicitly observing an emotion and labeling it without acting on it physically stops the electrical current from reaching your motor cortex. You literally cut the wire. You starve the introject. When you refuse to engage with the projection, when you consciously refuse to play the broken role that your shadow demands of you, the toxic person standing in front of you will feel it instantly. The invisible psychological tether is gone. To them, the magic of the interaction will suddenly and inexplicably disappear. They will feel an unsettling emptiness, and they will rapidly move on to find a more willing, unconscious host to carry their darkness. But I need to warn you about what happens next. When your brain is completely denied its highly familiar hit of chaotic, trauma-bonded dopamine, it is going to scream at you. It is going to go through literal, chemical withdrawal. Every single time you intentionally choose the boring, emotionally available person over the chaotic, magnetic, toxic one, you are painfully paving a brand new superhighway through the jungle. You are manually forcing your amygdala to learn that peace is not a dangerous ambush, but a permanent sanctuary. It will feel completely unnatural at first. It will feel uncomfortable. Let it. That intense discomfort you feel when dating a healthy person, that is not a sign that they are wrong for you. That is the physical, biological sensation of your brain violently rewiring itself for freedom. You now possess the exact blueprint. You have located the void. You are holding the scalpel. The shadow system has been entirely exposed and structurally dismantled. But what happens tomorrow? What does your external reality actually look like when you wake up and the ghost in the machine is finally, permanently dead? At the very beginning of this documentary, I made you a promise. I told you that you do not attract toxic people because you are fundamentally broken, unlucky, or too empathetic. I told you that a hidden, starving architecture in your mind was actively hunting them down to recreate a deeply familiar hell. We have walked through the underworld, we have located the introject, we have cut the wire. But what actually happens tomorrow morning? What does your physical reality look like the day after you use the scalpel? The day after you look your shadow dead in the eye, acknowledge the void, and permanently revoke its license to drive your life? Your brain enters a state of profound, unprecedented neurobiological rest. In neuroscience, there is a system called the default mode network, or the DMN. This is the network that is active when your brain is at rest, when you are daydreaming, or when you are simply existing. For your entire life, your DMN has been violently hijacked by your trauma introjects. Even when you were sitting perfectly still in a quiet room, your brain was burning massive amounts of metabolic energy. It was constantly, obsessively scanning the horizon for the next chaotic spark, the next intermittent reward, the next familiar threat. You have been running a marathon every day of your life without moving a muscle. When you execute the severing protocol, when you refuse to engage with the projection, the scanning stops. The baseline forcefully resets. For the very first time in your adult life, your central nervous system achieves true somatic equilibrium. You will wake up tomorrow morning, look around your bedroom, and the world will feel remarkably quiet. And in that quiet, you will notice something both terrifying and incredibly beautiful. The next time you walk into a crowded room, or a bar, or a networking event, the toxic people, the narcissists, the emotional vampires, the chaos agents, they won't even look at you. Because the algorithm is dead, the biometric frequency is permanently offline. You are no longer broadcasting the void. You are no longer an unconscious, desperate volunteer in their endless war to a predator scanning the room for a host. You have become entirely. You are not a magnet for toxicity. You never were. You were just a brilliant architect operating off a corrupted blueprint. But tonight, you own the scalpel. The shadow is behind you. The ghost is gone. The house is yours. Build something beautiful.